Bill Walshe, it's a pleasure to sit down with you. We usually, well, how do I say this in the right way? We have, general managers a lot of the time. I would say, legendary is probably a word to use for you, and this is a real honor and privilege to sit down with you. When the great Mr. Lawless introduced us, I've never heard him speak so highly of anyone the way he spoke of you. And then I mentioned to some Jumeirah individuals that I was coming to see you, and again, they spoke so highly of you. So I think your name and reputation precedes itself. So I am so excited to sit down and have a conversation. So thank you for giving us the time today.
Not at all. Thank you for having me. And when I think of people like Gerald Lawless, the inspiration that he's been in my career, the truth is, when I grow up, I want to be Gerald Lawless. I think we all do in hospitality to a degree, and I've been very privileged to be surrounded by incredibly professional, talented, dedicated, energetic, and motivated people throughout my career. And I think that often as the person at the front of the brand, you get the credit for the work that others do. So I think if there's a use of a word like legendary, I think it's not necessarily about me, but it's about the career that I've been fortunate enough to have to work with legends to create legendary experiences across the industry. But I'm still the 15-year-old kid who started his hospitality career taking out the trash, taking out the bins at a guest house in Limerick in Ireland. That was my first job, and I've been in hospitality every day of my life ever since. So very fortunate, very privileged, and very passionate about the job that I've done.
You're a very thoughtful man, and I'm really excited to get deep into the topic. We do usually start with tell me about your first job in Array. But what I wanted to ask you is just a very simple question. What does hospitality mean to you?
Hospitality for me is the pursuit of something, and the pursuit is a group of human beings who want to make other human beings happy. And what makes the first group of human beings happy is making every other human being happy. And I think to deliver true, natural, authentic hospitality, unless that desire to communicate the humanity of hospitality is present, it's inauthentic. So, look, I think there's many ways you can do that. My favorite word in the English language is the word proud. And I think one of the ways that we make people happy is by making people feel proud. And I disagree with my parents' generation who brought up my generation using the word proud almost like a profanity. Oh, pride comes before a fall. They say, well, I think pride is why people fly. It's not about falling, it's about flying. So I think for me, the essence of hospitality is that desire to put smiles on faces, to make people feel proud, to create memories that last for a lifetime. And the byproduct of doing all of those things is hopefully to be incredibly profitable. But the purpose should never be profit. The purpose is pride, and one leads to the other.
Amazing. Listen, let's definitely explore that. But for people watching and listening, you are in, I wouldn't say like envious is the wrong word, but you said when you want to grow up, you want to be like Mr. Lawless.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's many people who are listening today who want to be like Mr. Walshe. So just talk us through your journey and, what was day one? What was the first reason you're like, I want to get into hospitality, or was it not that? Where did you start?
I started in my hotel journey. The two words are Dermot Dwyer, who to an Irish person, Dermot is a genuine legend of Irish hospitality, a two-time president of the Irish Hotels Federation, and my mum's second cousin. And so there was a hotelier in the family, and Dermot is somebody who back then and still today speaks from the heart, gets very passionate, gets very emotional when talking about hospitality. And that inspired me. And it was Dermot who owned a guest house in Limerick and needed somebody, as I said a few moments ago, to take out the bin. So on a Tuesday, I get my bike, I'd cycle 3.5, 4 miles over to Clifton House. I'd walk up a big hill because I couldn't cycle up because I wasn't strong enough. And I'd take the bins down to the street. go home, and then come back on my bike the following day in order to bring the empty bins back in. And in so doing, I'd kind of walk past the windows, or I'd walk through the guest house, and I'd see people arriving, and I'd see people enjoying and engaging, and laughing and smiling. I thought, wow, this is the place where good things happen. And people just seem happier inside than I see them in other places. And there must be something to that, and kind of kept focusing on hospitality in the hotel business. And then, went to work at the Royal George Hotel in Limerick. One of those hotels when you work in there, like you do literally everything. So in the morning, I'd be in the kitchen cooking breakfast, and then running the floor in the restaurant, Mr. G's, for lunch, a couple of hours off in the afternoon, do dinner service, and then go up to the nightclub, and I was the warm-up DJ. So I'd get, the speakers cranked up, get the lights on, and I do the first hour and a half before like the main act came on. And then I go home, and I come back and do it all again the following day, and loved it. Because even though I was doing all those same things day after day, it never felt like doing the same things. And the individuality of experience in hospitality is something that I've enjoyed, because it's all about human beings interacting with other human beings. And that brings a level of not only authenticity and intimacy, but also unpredictability, because it's humans and humans. So there was always something unexpected that would happen, and fun things. Went from there to the Galway Hotel School, did the block release course there. So the Royal George kind of sponsored me through that, in the sense that because they were my sponsor to get on that particular academic path, they sort of own the soul. So, on a Friday, I get in the bus from Galway back to Limerick and work the weekend, and then go back to college, and the day exams finished, back in at work. So very work focused for my entire career. Did some time in Switzerland, and I think was fortunate enough to recognize very, very early on that I'd found my thing. My happy place work-wise was going to be the hotel industry, and it's never not been that.
I think people have chapters of their career, their life. And correct me if I'm wrong, would the major chapters be Jumeirah Group, Doyle Collection, Viceroy, or are we missing anything here before we get into it?
I think each chapter is, was worthy of being written and is worthy of being read. So those are the higher profile ones. I guess maybe, the narrative was building. I was getting more senior. I was on a bigger stage. But, the first day I took the trash cans out was every bit as important as anything that happened the first time I walked into the world's only 7-star hotel in Burj Al Arab. Two wildly different experiences, but both made me who I've become, and I wouldn't be me without either of them. So
we've two types of listeners. We've got your senior executives in the industry, and we've got more junior. And I'm very passionate that hospitality is one of the best career paths you can take, because it's a passport to the world.
Yeah.
We're sitting here in West Hollywood and Los Angeles. We're both Irish, and we both spent time in Dubai. And I think, while I'm on the tech side of hospitality, I'm still in hospitality.
Yeah. And
I think there's so many varied paths you can take. But let's just focus on the operational side of hotels. And if you were to say some key takeaways, if you were, say you just got your job as assistant front office manager, maybe you got your first position as duty manager, and you want to take it to your first big job, but it's going to take you 5 years. What are some of the learnings you'd want to pass down to that exact team member to say, listen, focus on these handful of things over the next 5 years, and it'll pay dividends?
I think I'll answer it in two different ways. I think there's the functional areas to focus on, and I would say to anybody who wants to build a career in hospitality and become more senior and ultimately run a company or be part of the senior leadership team of an organization, as cliched as it sounds, get as much experience of different things as you can. So I think in very many businesses in recent years, there has been this sense of you got to specialize. So be the marketing person, be the revenue management person, be the operations person, and be the best in that one area that you can be, and that's how you succeed. I think ultimately hoteliers by our nature are generalists, because there are so very many moving parts in a business that is open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And I think that if the goal of somebody is to become senior in a leadership capacity, try to have touched as many different areas as you can, in order to have an understanding, but also to be able to display and develop empathy with people who do that job as you become senior by having been there. And having been there is important. And get out and about. I do think that the frequency with which people change jobs these days is annoying. And I don't think it's helpful. I just think it's become a thing. I think, do a job for a couple of years, and if you're good, promotion's going to happen. And I'm not saying stay stagnant, but have enough time to actually gain an understanding of something, to make a contribution to something, and to be able to talk with credibility about an achievement somewhere. And I think I see an increasing amount of young people in our industry, when I look at their resumes, an 8-month stint is a long time. And they sit in front of me in an interview and they try to tell me how in the last 3 jobs, each of which they held for between 6 months and a year, they transformed the company. And I call BS, because you can't. Nobody can in any position of that nature. So I think dedicate yourself to the task that you have. Try to vary the experiences that you gain as you progress through your career. And then remember, that's the functional area, and remember non-functionally what hospitality is and what it means to you as an individual building a career. For me, it was human beings making human beings happy, but it was also a realization that I came to relatively early on, that for me, hospitality would be best expressed as an oxymoron. It flourishes, the magic happens at a point of contradiction, and that contradiction is expressed as consistent individuality. And I think hospitality, particularly luxury hospitality, lives in that moment. In that, as leaders, we have to make sure that our businesses, our operations, have a sufficient degree of consistency to enable us to do things well, and to do them well every single time, and to do it right, and to have efficiency in the organization. But a primary obligation of a leader in luxury hospitality is to manage the infusion of consistency and to stop the application of consistency before it reaches a point where it suffocates individuality and spontaneity and authenticity. And that, sadly, is not happening enough in our industry. It's all about consistency. It's all about standard operating practices, programs, procedures, and policies, and platforms. And that expression of individuality, that expression of humanity, of generosity, of compassion, doesn't happen because there isn't a standard operating practice for expressing compassion and humanity, because no one wrote one. So what do we do? And then you end up in the Little Britain moment, where the computer said no. And let's make sure that we remain committed as an industry to not being an industry where computers say no. We're an industry where human beings say yes and have a default setting to start with yes. It's Gerald Lawless all over again. Yes is the answer. We will never say no as a first response to a colleague or a guest request. And that's the right way to express it, because Joe's a very smart man, as we know. And it would have been very easy to use the cliche that a lot of service brands use, which is we always say yes to our guest, which is unreal. Because if I come and stay at your hotel for 10 nights and I have a $20,000 bill, and at checkout I say, you know what, I've decided I'd rather not pay, you're going to use the word no pretty quickly. It's going to enter into conversation. So let's kind of say, never say no as a first response to a guest request. But let human beings be human beings, and let policies, procedures, standard operating practices and platforms support them, not control them.
I love all of that, and I think we've definitely connected and aligned on our view on hospitality. Good. For the recent time we've known each other. I think you've explained why it happens because of SOPs and computer says no, and each day I stay in a new hotel, because I travel a lot, I'm kind of even more disheartened with the world of hospitality because I feel the word hospitality isn't there. It's service, not hospitality, which we discussed. How do we change this?
Well, we change by having conversations like this, where we talk about the reality of what hospitality is and what it is not. And whenever I think about that, I call to mind Danny Meyer. Danny's one of my heroes. For those listening who may not know who Danny is, founder of the Union Square Hospitality Group, which is an amazing New York restaurant group. And then started flipping burgers, and after 1,000 burger flips, decided he was ready with the right burger and launched Shake Shack, which revolutionized that particular genre. Danny wrote a book that I'd encourage everybody who's watching or listening to this podcast to read, and it's called Setting the Table. Danny wrote it probably 20 years ago. I read it at least once a year, every year. I give it out to people all the time. If I'm speaking publicly, which is my passion about hospitality ideology, I'll throw copies out into the audience because I think it has everything. And the most important phrase that I've ever heard in my career is contained in that book. And it's Danny talking about the difference between service and hospitality. And essentially what he talks about is that service is something that happens to you, and hospitality is done for you. So intention is the difference between service and hospitality. And I think that hospitality has become extremely transactional in recent years in pursuit of profit. And don't get me wrong, none of what I say means that we should not concentrate on running profitable businesses. I'm trying to make them more profitable by calibrating them in a way that is going to create a connection with the customer that will make them stay and make them come back. And transactions, ease of transaction is appreciated by a customer, but an emotional connection is what they value more so. So one of the things I'd say to people is to look at the way that they deliver in a hospitality surrounding and ask themselves, if the way I interact with my guest, and this isn't about efficiency, if post that interaction, could the guest tell that I actually give a damn? Or is it, I asked for coffee, I got a coffee. I, asked for my steak medium rare and it came medium rare. So yeah, it was great. It's fine. But fine is never going to blow somebody's mind. In fact, fine for me should be, and I've been campaigning on this for years, should be eliminated from acceptable vocabulary in hospitality. Fine, like its F-word cousin, should be considered a profanity. And I think it's a worse profanity than the other F-word that people are now thinking about as they listen to me. Because I think fine is the ultimate expression of mediocrity. And for those of us in hospitality to be willing for a moment to deliver mediocrity or to accept that we have been mediocre in what we do and think that's okay, we're in the wrong jobs. So if somebody is listening to this and they work in front office and their job is to check people in and check them out, ask yourself, have you ever found yourself having a muscle memory type conversation with a guest? And a guest who at checkout has maybe stayed for a long time, spent a lot of money, came for a particular reason. And at checkout, you ask them, how was your stay? And they say, it was fine. And you go, okay, great. Well, no, that's an utter failure. It's an abdication from the intention that we should have, which is to create as close to perfection as we can and to never stop striving. As His Highness Sheikh Mohammed said, the race for quality is a race that should never have and will never have a finishing line. And that should be a mantra for us in hospitality. So never accept fine. Look for other F words that are acceptable. Fantastic or fabulous, or if you're, I don't know, if you're Gen Z, phenomenal. And go for it big time.
I like your focus on words. Someone once said to me, don't respond no problem, because it's the two most negative words in the dictionary, no and problem. And
my version of that is when I see somebody proposing something that's supposed to be high quality, luxury, often expensive, and they go, why not? Why not come and spend the weekend with us? Oh, so you're asking me to search for a negative now, because I'm actually pretty good at that. As opposed to giving me a positive proposition of why I should do something, why I would want to to engage and repeat.
It's. I can see already your attention to detail is immaculate. I really love it. Just a recent experience when I stayed in Castlemartyr, and we had a fantastic experience because of the gentleman down there, Cormac, and my mum just sent me a photo of the Tullamore Dew whiskey that we're sending down to him because
nice.
That's how good it was.
Yeah.
That's fantastic hospitality. Because we as guests are now sending him a present to thank him for how he treated us as a family.
And the reason you're doing that is because that person did give a damn. They didn't deliver you service, they delivered you hospitality. You knew it was for you. It was for a family celebration you were having. You knew that they'd woken up that morning and decided that you were important. They were going to put effort into it. And in so doing, helped you and your family to create memories that will last you for a lifetime and for all of the right reasons. And a human being made another human being happy. And what human beings do when they connect in a positive way is they become friends, and friends stay in touch, and friends send each other gifts. So you've got a new friend as a result of that hospitality experience. And again, I would challenge myself, you and anybody watching and listening to this podcast, how many of the guests that recently came to, stayed in, paid for an experience in your hotel and then left as friends? Probably very few. So we need to work harder to create those personal relationships and to create a friendship and to have a guest. And I've actually never talked about this before. This is just coming to my head right now. It's going to be my new F word, like the friend. Surely that's where the magic moment lives, is that if a human being arrives as a guest and leaves as a friend, we've done something. Oh, I'm excited about this now. I like this. We've done something.
Is he
really
trademark this before Bill leaves? I am really enjoying this. I want to not pivot because I think it's on the same trajectory. But if I just say two words, I want you to take it from there.
Yep.
Jumeirah Group, that's two already, and Mr. Lawless.
One would not be what it is without the other. You gotta look back in order to look forward. And I think that any cliche time, buildings survive on the strength of their foundations, and Gerald Lawless was, and in my mind will always be, the foundation upon which the Jumeirah Group was built, and the pillars that emerged at ground level up with that solid ideological foundation were the hallmarks. Smile and greet the guest, never say no as a first response, and treat colleagues with the respect that you would want to be treated. And everything that he built has relevance today. Interpretation may change because times have changed. It's a couple of decades later. But it was so fundamental to the creation of an extraordinary hospitality experience that in a decade, in a century from now, the stuff that the foundations that Jumeirah was built on, I think will still be incredibly relevant.
We are kind of like a manifestation of our previous experiences. If you look back now, what is it from that period of time that still sticks with you today and has maybe molded you into the leader you are today?
I think I'll answer it in two ways. One, continuing the conversation we were just having about the culture and Gerald's leadership. It really had a profound effect on me from an ideological point of view and made me into the purpose-driven leader that I became. And I do think that every hospitality organization needs to put significantly more effort than typically we do into articulating purpose. When you think about where the effort is put, we're really, really good as hoteliers about explaining what we do. We're very good when it comes to explaining how we do what we do, and we suck at talking about why we do what we do. And we got to get much better at that. We've got to put roadmaps in place with an equal amount of emphasis on the culture of the organization as the financial future of the organization. Think about how much time every hotel in the world spends preparing an annual budget, right? Typically they'll start in July, excuse me. And from July through to the end of the year, an inordinate amount of time is spent building a financial document for the following financial year that usually 3 to 4 to maybe 6 weeks into the following year is irrelevant. Because a budget is nothing more than a numerical interpretation of a set of assumptions. And those assumptions are made and are valid at the time that they're made. And then life gets in the way. And then the budget gets parked and we just forecast through the rest of the year. It's like 4 months of work for a document that probably has a 6-week lifespan of relevancy. And then I'd ask the hoteliers who are now nodding in agreement, because they are, trust me, you are, to compare the amount of time in 2023 in comparison to the amount of time that you put into preparing a 2024 budget. How much time did you put into a 2024 culture roadmap, a cultural outlook, an ideological statement of intent? And I'm going to guess it's 90-10 weighting in favor of the financial planning versus the cultural planning. And that's why people leave the industry. I mean, look what pandemic did to us. I mean, we lost a generation of frontline colleagues in hospitality. They just didn't come back. And after pandemic, when they didn't come back, a lot of hospitality leaders got very hysterical and started shouting the wrong questions. And it was like, where did they go? And no, not the right, try again. Why did they go? Getting better. Now ask the real question. Why didn't they come back? Why was it when people who worked in our industry were given forcible time off, forcible reflection time through the closure of hotels all over the world, that they actually thought, is this somewhere I want to be? Do I feel like I'm treated with respect? Do I feel that I'm part of the narrative? Do I understand the purpose of the organization, or am I cannon fodder? And then those folks actually gave us the ultimate F-word response when we said, all right, will I be back now? And they went, I'm good. I'm actually in Boise, Idaho, packing boxes for Amazon in a warehouse. And actually, I prefer this. I mean, if that's not a wake-up call for our industry, in terms of a cultural and an ideological disconnection from the very people who create the first and last impression with the guest. I mean, it's bizarre to me. The people who have most guest interaction, who do create that first and last impression, are always the lowest paid and least regarded people in the business. And it's lunacy. I mean, these people are heroes and should be on pedestals, should be constantly consulted and communicated with. And we just keep them in the dark, and so they leave, and we've got to change that.
Doyle Collection?
Yeah.
First CEO role?
Yeah. And like an incredible opportunity and an incredible honor. Again, as an Irish person growing up in the hotel industry, I mean, Jury's was it. What P.V. Doyle created was something quite extraordinary. And here was a guy who, as he built his hotel company, didn't have an office. P.V. Doyle would he used to keep a desk in the lobby of each of the hotels and just wander around them throughout the day. And the family would tell me stories that people would say, how do you get any work done? Don't the guests always interrupt you? And he's like, if ever I view a guest interaction as an interruption, then I'm in the wrong business and I'm doing something wrong. So again, think about how much time we spend on the floor of our own hotels interacting with guests. And genuinely, if anybody listening to this thinks that a guest interacting with you is a guest interrupting you, quit. Please, just go. Because we should want it. If you're one of those people who, when you're in a hotel and you're in an elevator and there are guests in the elevator, you do the famous arm thing so that you cover your name badge, hope they don't realize you work there because they might talk to you, go. You're in the wrong business. It's just not right. So to be able to go from Jumeirah in Dubai under Gerald's leadership, keep the Irish connection. I knew he wasn't going anywhere for a while. I wanted to be a CEO, so it was like, get out or don't do it. So after 7 years with him, I got his blessing, and went and collaborated with the next generation of the Doyle family to following a take private which is where a publicly listed company comes back into private ownership, which is what the family wanted. Because I think when juries went public, it became very successful. But maybe that spark of hospitality that PV had ignited wasn't there to the degree that the family wanted to continue that legacy. And we went on a path of renovation, recreation, relaunch, rebrand, and it was just for sure a watershed moment in my career to be the part of creating something new out of something so established, and an honor to work with the family. So yeah, and then, obviously had pretty meaningful connections in the Middle East from my time in Jumeirah. At that time, Mubadala, the Abu Dhabi investment entity, were the owners of Viceroy, and called me up and said, look, we're not hotel people. We have this asset that we own. We'd like to figure out how to articulate its purpose, to position it, to grow it, to do something wonderful with it. Are you interested? And I thought, yeah, another continent. Let's pack up, move to LA, and do that.
Can I just ask one question before we get into the Viceroy, which is, what is that feeling on the first day where you are now the ultimate decision maker to some extent, right? You are at the top. Like, what's that feeling on day one when, I'm not saying that you didn't make decisions for yourself at Jumeirah, but like there is that person where, like I'm a founder, a much smaller company obviously than what you've run, but my investors still ring me. I can't say, speak to Misha, speak to James. It's Mark who has. Yeah. How did that feel? Were you so ready? Were you excited? Was there anything you learned? Was there naivety? Like, talk me through that first few days.
I mean, a whole host of feelings and emotions. I mean, starting with, I guess, confidence, and a confidence driven by having worked for incredible people. We talked about Dermot, worked for Reto Witwe at Kempinski. I've had some incredible, not just hoteliers, but incredible leaders. And people might find it weird that I'm making a distinction because both of those leaders were hoteliers. But I've known amazing hoteliers who weren't great leaders, and I've known amazing leaders who maybe aren't hoteliers. And I think if you just because somebody cooks really well doesn't mean they're going to be a great executive chef, because there's a leadership component. And not all people who do also lead. And I was fortunate to have been exposed to very, very dynamic, positive and strategic leadership styles, some of which I would mimic and some of which I would build on and some of which I would leave behind because it wasn't how I wanted to do it. So there wasn't a fear of, am I going to be able to do this? Because I'd seen so many great people do it so well. I figured, I can plagiarize enough of other people's chapters that they had written in order to write my own and then modify and put my own spin and my own voice on it as I move forward.
And what is that? What's the Bill Walshe style of leadership today?
I think it's about being present first and foremost. I think understanding the purpose of a business, putting time and effort into communicating that, creating the ideology I talked about, creating and activating it, and I think being culturally focused and recognized that here's what my style of leadership is. Every time I would do orientation, and it kind of started as an icebreaker, but it became one of the more meaningful components of what was a very meaningful interaction with people who'd made a choice to join the organization. What an incredible compliment, young people, highly educated, talented, who could work anywhere. And they said, we're going to come and work for your company. So for starters, the first thing a leader needs to do in orientation is to say thank you, because it's a gift that you've been given that these people come, as opposed to going somewhere else. And I would always introduce myself in this way, and I would say, hey everyone, my name is Bill. And I'm very many things, but the one thing undeniably that I am in this room of people is that I am the guy with the stupidest job title of anybody present. Because when I look at the way people are titled in hospitality, for the most part, it's incredibly action-focused and purpose-driven. What does a restaurant manager do? Manage a restaurant. What does a cocktail server do? They serve cocktails. what does the chief of the executives do? Executive chiefly? So at a point of seniority, it goes from being about purpose to being about status. And we lose that very visible moment of expressing the intention of our role. I'm a restaurant manager. My intention is to manage this restaurant as well as I possibly can do. Boom, I'm going to do it. I'm the chief of the executives. It's really hard to connect that to purpose. So I would rebrand myself. And I rebranded myself in multiple orientation sessions over the years. I've rebranded myself on stage at multiple conferences. I had business cards printed. And I moved from the status to the purpose. So rather than introducing myself as Bill Walshe, the Chief Executive Officer of the Viceroy Hotel Group, I assumed the persona of Bill Walshe, the Chief Pride Officer of the Viceroy Hotel Group. Now I'm on message. Now I'm stating what I'm here to do. I'm here to create environments that make people proud. And that is so much more powerful than I'm chief of the executives, CEO, way. So that's my style, is to try to create a human-to-human connection, to try to articulate purpose, to try to then business model that purpose through roadmap, to put as much effort on culture activation as financial and business process activation, to PV Doyle it, to not sit in the office, to get out there, to be on the floor, to hope to be interrupted by a customer, to deliver random acts of kindness internally for colleagues, externally to our guests, to lead by example in letting colleagues see that even I, on occasion, I have a board that I used to respond to, but you know what I'd say to them? There are times in life when it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. If something feels right, do it. Be spontaneous in the moment. Nothing would please me more than if I was on a business trip, sitting in the restaurant of the Viceroy Hotel, having dinner on my own, sitting strategically so I could watch the room, letting my eyes land on a table that I liked, with no rational reason to like them, but just getting a good vibe from a particular table, just sense checking my vibe with somebody in the restaurant. Are those good people? Are they nice people? Are they having fun? Are you having fun with them? Yeah, okay, tick a box. Right, dinner's on me. Wait till I've left, and when they ask for the bill, tell them there isn't one. Why? Because you're nice people. And we like nice people being in our hotels, and feel free to come back anytime you want. And heads would explode, but we don't have a policy for that. We don't have a policy for kindness, for spontaneity, for generosity. Well, then write one. And I'm starting, which is, I can, so I will. Those folks get a free dinner. And you know what? The next time you see somebody who's been here before, who profoundly affects you with the positivity of their interaction, and you think the right thing to do is drop a dessert on the table or give them a glass of champagne, just do it. And if anyone gives you crap for it, come talk to me and I'll have your back. So very long-winded answer, but you know, I'm a leader and I like leaders who are not like the spreadsheet leaders, right? And financial analysis and understanding the mechanics and the intricacies of the business is extremely important. But I want people to excel as leaders, not lead by Excel.
Okay. Do you need to optimize for what your strengths are as a leader by bringing in someone that you have full trust with as he's the finance guy and you have full trust in him so you can be more of that leader?
Yeah, 100%. I think, and again, books have been written about it and speeches get made about it, and you know, you need to surround yourself with people that are not like yourself. It's actually really, really true, and that's the reason books get written and speeches get made. And it's not always done. There are people who attain or pursue leadership so that they can have their own ideas validated by those around them. And I don't think that's what the role of a leader is, and I don't think that's what the role of a team is. So yeah, know your strengths. I understand every aspect of the hospitality business, and I've been in it for long enough, and I am detail enough focused that I'll see immediately if something is off. I'm not necessarily the right guy to fix it if it's off. And there are others who'll see, I'll know it's off, but I might not even know why it's off. So the example that you give, Bill, as a leader, always needs an amazing chief financial officer, because that's not what I would ever be.
Viceroy Hotels.
Yeah.
acquired by Highgate.
Yeah.
10 years as
Yeah.
CEO. Can you talk us through the 10 years?
Wow. It was quite a journey. So came to Viceroy in July of 2012, and immediately started to try to understand what this extraordinary brand stood for. I've talked a lot about the need for ideology. I then presented what I believe Viceroy's ideology should be in January of 2013. So it took about 6 months in the business, talking to people, listening to people, more important than talking to people, talking to them to ask questions, listening to their answers, to try to figure out where we were, and where was the potential in the business, where maybe did we need to look at things differently. My favorite exercise as a leader is an exercise called Stop, Continue, Start. And what you need to do is very regularly step back from the business you're running, the department you're running, the job that you're doing, and think about everything that's happening, and then categorize each of those component parts. I'm doing this. Do I need to keep doing it because it continues to create value? Do I need to stop doing it because at the point at which that action was introduced, it made sense and it created value, but perhaps it's no longer relevant and not creating value? And if I can find things that I can stop doing, then I'm going to free up time, resource, and I'll be able to start doing things that maybe are now relevant that weren't in the past. On my second day at Viceroy, on a Tuesday morning at 11 o'clock, 6 or 7 of the senior leaders of the company came into my office and sat around a table, and then we dialed in 2 other senior leaders from international locations. And a meeting happened for about an hour. And at the end of the hour, everyone said, great, all right, next Tuesday, fantastic. And as we were leaving, I held one person back. And I said, genuine question, why does that meeting take place? And the answer I got was, but it's 11 o'clock on Tuesday. And it turned out that the meeting had been created in order to address an issue in one of Viceroy's locations, and that issue had been resolved. But muscle memory was such that the behavior was at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday, that group of people got together and they continued to get together and they found things to talk about to kill the hour. And I'm sure some of it was creating value. But the reason that that hour had been taken from their working week, the reason was no longer relevant. So that meeting never happened again. And I said to everybody who attended it, next Tuesday at 11 o'clock, just have nothing on your calendar and see what happens. And I got like 3 new business ideas from people. So stop, continue, start. And I think when I got to Viceroy, that was an obligation and an opportunity for me as the freshest pair of eyes. Because when you start a new job, you're super objective. And on day 2, a little bit of subjectivity sets in. And then, it's a subjective spiral from that point onwards. So I wanted to take that early period to be as objective as I could. And then in Miami at the General Manager and Corporate Leadership Conference, I said, okay, so here's what I think we are. Here's what I think we need to be. And I've structured it as this series of about 20 ideological statements. We are hosts first and always. We're attentive in the detail. We create value. We're unabashed provocateurs. All these things. And I ended up coming to refer to it as the accidental ideology, because I'd actually created it just for that presentation, to create dialogue, never knowing that it would become the backbone, the platform, the DNA, the fabric, pick your word, of Viceroy for the next decade. And activated it across the organization. So it started out from the get-go as being something meaningful as well as functional. And we signed management agreements and we grew, and we lost management agreements as happens when hotels get sold, and we created collaborations. We entered new markets. We exited certain markets. We suffered through a pandemic like everybody else did. But I think, and here I'll talk about what I was told by colleagues in the organization, was that in pandemic times, we actually had somewhere to go. We had a structure, we had a belief system, we had ideological goals, and that connected us as human beings, and we were actually able to ride it out a lot easier than a lot of other organizations. But yeah, it was a blast.
I was with two gentlemen yesterday from large organizations in the tech world,
Yeah.
Oracle and Apple, and we were talking about acquisitions, mergers, and how government gets involved in tech at the moment. I have a young tech startup, and one of our routes to exit at some point in the future is acquisition, and when government gets involved, it can be tricky, and it's not good for people like myself. But we talk about the consolidation in the industry, and now as a free man with no brand today that you can speak freely, I'd love your thoughts just, on Hilton buying Graduate Hotels up, and Marriott buying XYZ, and Accor buying, and government never getting involved and saying, is this good for the industry? Like, what are your thoughts? Is it good for the industry? Is it good for consumers?
I don't think there's an easy, direct answer, because I think it's good in some respects and perhaps challenging in others. And what I mean by that is that some of the greatest hospitality experience that have ever been created have been created by passionate individuals. Let's think for a moment about where our industry came from. Centuries ago, people would undertake arduous and dangerous journeys on foot. And when it got dark and cold at night, they'd stay in someone's home. And they might give them a gift, they might barter in return for nourishment and warmth. And that kept them literally alive, and then they would continue on their journey. So keeping guests safe, warm, and nourished is at the heart of what we do, and it is today as much as it was back then. And then you think about some of the best hospitality experiences that you've had and people watching and listening have had. And frequently people will talk about going to a small hotel or a guest house or a B&B in a small town, and the owner was omnipresent and like it was personality led and personality delivered, and I think that's what makes us who we are. Danny Meyer again, do things for people, not do things to people.
If I loop it all back from what I hear from you and use the word, you want to make people feel proud and pride. It's like, as a leader, you give your organization a feeling, and then they exude that feeling onto their customers. Is that, in some essence, correct?
I think, yeah. But I mean, rather than just deciding for a customer what the feeling is that you want them to have, and going through a period of experiential creation, I think that mature, courageous organizations actually go through a period of co-creation. So you talked earlier about how many times you stay in hotels, how frequently you travel, and I'm sure the questions that you get asked are always the same. And I'm going to confidently guess that arguably the most important question is never asked of you. So when you arrive at a hotel, for starters, after a long journey with multiple components, as you walk, carrying 2 suitcases and wearing a backpack, someone probably looks at you and asks you if you're checking in. You think, geez, genius, how'd you work that out? And then they'll say to you, through a series of questions, would you like to be on a high floor or a low floor? Would you like to, have a newspaper in the morning? Do you need a wake-up call? And all of those functional components that, is service, because it's being done to you. When was the last time at check-in somebody asked you, why are you here?
Yeah, I can't
Surely
remember.
that's the most fundamental question. So if we want to do what you're talking about, making the customer proud, making them happy, making them feel that we give a damn, going from service to hospitality, then let's make sure we're doing what we know they would like us to do for them, and not just what we think or have guessed they might like us to do for them. Because if I said to you at check-in, so why are you here? What brings you to LA? Oh, you know what? I'm an entrepreneur. I've got a tech company. I'm in the hospitality space, and just here to create some connections, or any version that somebody could have of that story. And somebody said, "Oh, right. So first time in the city, looking to meet business leaders." Yeah. Well, you know what? Chamber of Commerce meets here on the second Tuesday of every month, and that's tomorrow. And I know the president. And I'll be happy to put a call in and maybe he'll have a cup of coffee with you and talk to you about the business environment and create some opportunities. How's that hotel stay compared to, did you enjoy your stay? Yeah, it's fine. Thank you very much. Giving a damn, making the effort, being a human being, making another human being happy by interacting, by asking questions, by being curious, by being inquisitive, and then by being generous.
To me, that feels like the end point is the outcome of what that team member does. But what are like the daily inputs that leadership needs to do to make sure that that output happens, right? Because you're an incredible person, Bill, and like I'm sure if you were back at the front desk, you would do that, and but it doesn't happen for a reason. So
yeah, but I mean, you create opportunities for learning. So I mean, we didn't just write an ideology for Viceroy and send it out as an email attachment and say, now do that. Actually, we did at the beginning, and no one did anything because they're like, wait, this is Bill's ideology. He understands it. And I was like, oh, yeah, they're right. So we created a role in the company who was kind of like the chief activist of our ideology. He created an ideological platform which was technology-based. It was interactive. Everybody in the company had access to it. We then created modules where leaders at a supervisory level, a department head level, could introduce ideology into conversation at the beginning of a shift. And actually highlight an ideological component. And then we created a repository online for people to submit their pride stories where they had evidence of a colleague who'd gone out of their way to do something that was in tune with our passion for delivering hospitality. And they told stories about a concierge at Yas Viceroy, when that was part of the portfolio, who was standing in the front of the hotel. These guests came running out, panicking. He's like, what's up? He said, we lost track of time. We're late. We're meeting friends. It's a dinner reservation. Are there any taxis? Can we get a hotel car? And it was just a really busy time around Formula One. Hotel cars were all gone. Taxis weren't available. So he said, stand there. He went and got his car and drove them. And you just think, like, that's everything. That's it. And then told that story. And that creates a moment of creating confidence and inspiration for other people who think, wow, I could do something like that. So I think you need to evidence behaviors in an organization that others mimic in order for the outputs to be delivered on the inputs.
Is there an incentive program at the end of that? Because you talked about earlier saying that people on the front line who are speaking to guests, they should be paid more, as an example. And I've always said that I think teachers are so fundamental to society, and I think like the education system, a lot of it is because they're not paid enough, and we need to figure out how you can pay them more. One of my passions in the industry is I believe technology is so underutilized in our space that it could enhance us and make us super humans as giving great hospitality. Because when I walk into the Mondrian Hotel today, I think they should know me. Not because I'm a VIP, but because like the group CTO of Accor is a board advisor, and I have 10 Enishmore GMs on my podcast, and I did an event at SLS in Dubai last week, and they don't know me. I think technology allows them to know me, and we're not utilizing it. And I think I've envisioned technology, and I don't see it as like removing staff, but what I do see it as, it takes away admin. It removes staff who don't want to be there anyway. And then it allows you to pay the staff who do want to be in hospitality more money. Because you do need to incentivize them. Right? Because they're going to Amazon, like you said.
Look, I 100% agree. I think that the incorporating technology into hospitality, we're not fast adopters. And we need to get better at it. And I think if the technology platforms that we embrace are those that enrich an experience for a guest, then why wouldn't we? And I think that I guess the moment that perhaps scares some people in hospitality is what you're talking about is highlighting individuality and personalization of experience, because they should know who you are. Yet there's this mindset in hospitality that the only way that you can create that sense of personal connection is by a human being interacting with another human being. And I don't think necessarily what you're suggesting is that goes away. You're just making people better at doing it. You're making it smarter, more efficient as an interaction. Because actually thinking about the idea that I talked earlier, when no one ever asks you, why are you here when you check into a hotel? Imagine if you checked in and they knew why you're here.
That's my point. I remember when I worked at Sofitel in Trump, we used to print out the photos of the actual VIPs that they determined was VIP, and we put it up in back office and you'd see their photos.
Yeah.
Every human has a LinkedIn or an Instagram or a Facebook, and if you can allow them some form of pre-digital check-in, they can upload a profile photo like we do at Soho House. All of a sudden, every single guest that arrives into that lobby, you could have a picture of them, and you could know their face. And now they're all VIPs.
And when it does happen, it's magical. I stayed in a hotel that was not a hotel I was connected to. Obviously, they knew what I did for a living, but the bedside amenity. Instead of a bottle of Evian or a Ferrero Rocher or whatever it normally gets put in, was an oxygen shot, because somebody in the reservations department had Googled me, had done some research, read an interview that I'd given, where in the body of the interview, I wasn't doing an interview about oxygen. I talked about how much, as somebody who's on the road all the time, I love incorporating oxygen opportunities into my routine, because it keeps you fresh and clear and helps get over jet lag. And they'd gone out and found little canned oxygen shots, and that was my welcome amenity. And I thought, yeah, that's everything. So I think we do need to get much smarter, and there is technology out there that helps us to deliver extraordinary experiences. It doesn't always need, for me, I think the ideal in luxury hospitality is when you do that and the guests are walking away like minds blown, and they're saying, how'd they do that? They have a bit of technology that helped them there. So it may, look, when it comes to checking in, bypassing a desk, opening the door of your room, evident technology is amazing, and it works, and it needs to be embraced. But I think there can also be some hidden technologies that just are like superpowers, just make us better at what we do.
I was recently back in London at a hotel that we have like a corporate deal with, and I'm training for an Ironman right now. And like it is up on LinkedIn, and not that they all follow me on LinkedIn or anything, but it's up there. It's like, it's public knowledge. But when I get into the room, there's a bottle of wine and a cake.
Right.
And I did say to the GM, I said, I thank you so much, by the way, like truly grateful, but just, I feel like you could try to get to know me better.
Yep.
And like, if you put electrolytes and a protein shake, like to me, cheaper probably, by the way, than the wine and the cake, because no one's making the pastry cake, and the bottle of wine is but it's so much more meaningful. I think technology allows that hotel to know me before I arrive, and I don't think we're utilizing. So I'm about utilizing technology to give the team superpowers that we can't do. I think it's the biggest opportunity.
Look, you should only ever have to express a preference once. And if you're staying with a chain hotel, and you're in a Four Seasons, a Ritz-Carlton, whatever it might be, a Viceroy in location A, and you have that conversation with the general manager, then the general manager should put notes on your profile which talks about you, what he's learned or she's learned about you, what your preference is. And then, the next time you stay in a hotel of that group, you don't have to go through the same thing again. But, we think we're being anonymously generous, which kind of undermines the act of generosity, because what happens is, in the hotel, there's a conversation about who are the VIP arrivals that day, and there's maybe 3 categories of amenity. 1, 2, 3. Okay, John Smith, he's the corporate buyer from one of our corporate accounts. All right, give him number 2. It's got nothing to do with John Smith as a human being. It's easy for us to only have 3 categories of amenity, and therefore we just send them out. So yeah,
it feels like an SOP for service.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than hospital.
Exactly.
Bill Walshe, what's next?
When this interview goes viral, then I'll write the book and get paid 50 grand for a speech. No, what is next? At the moment, I'm enjoying being kind of the master of my own destiny, and not being attached to a brand is actually extremely liberating. So I can be a lot more opinionated, and one of the things that I do and I love to do is to speak on these kind of issues, and I've got a pretty active public speaking platform. So having, and I think the two words I probably use more than any other words today are the word pride and ideology. And I've always found those two to be very connected. So I did what we do in Los Angeles, the home of Hollywood, where you have two words and you just shove them together, like back in the day, Brad and Angelina became Brangelina. So I had pride and ideology. So I created a word and I registered it called Prideology. And I go out and I talk to organizations. Typically, it was exclusively hospitality audiences. You know, the next two talks that I'm giving as keynote speeches, one is to an annual convention of leadership in the senior living industry, retirement homes, which is very connected to hospitality.
For sure.
And then doing an opening keynote for one of the largest golf management companies in the world. So I'm loving getting out in front of different audiences and seeing how transferable our ideas on hospitality are and tailoring the messaging for that. So I'm going to remain very, very active in that. That's also led, and now that I'm not with a brand, other brands have kind of picked up the phone and said, wait, do you talk about this stuff like only in public forums, or would you come and talk at a general managers meeting or a corporate leadership meeting? And I'm doing that as well now, and just kind of sharing my experience, in addition to doing some advisory work, some consulting, sitting on a couple of boards, and working on projects that I really enjoy. I mean, I'm working with a group who have a resort property, and right now we're going through an application for a license to establish a psilocybin service center, and to explore something that we see happening in very progressive luxury wellness locations, which is the introduction of non-traditional holistic modalities to help people be their best selves. And you know, microdosing is something, and it's a golf resort, and look, anecdotally, 70% of the PGA Tour use microdosing as part of their preparation in order to think clearly, manage stress and anxiety. So, you know, did I think, you know, after a decade of running Viceroy, that I'd be trying to set up a mushroom clinic for microdosing in a luxury resort? No, but it's fascinating and I love it.
Yeah, listen, I've read studies on people who've left the army who are microdosing MDMA to get over PTSD, and the results are staggering. I know my mum's a nurse, and she said the second she starts aching bones, she'll be she'll be using non-traditional. So exceptional. Is there, when you look back, if you reflect for a moment, what has hospitality done to your life, family?
Oh, it hasn't done something to my life. It has been my life. It's taken me to parts of the world that I never expected to experience. It's introduced me to cultures that I would not have been expected to interact with as the little boy growing up in Ireland. I mean, back in those halcyon days with Gerald Lawless at Jumeirah, we had 112 nationalities working for Jumeirah. You know, we lived in a place like Dubai, which is so incredibly cosmopolitan, that by the age of 6, my kids could sing Happy Birthday in a dozen languages because of the makeup of the population, the community of education that they were involved in. So I think hospitality has been everything. It's shaped me, my outlook, my travel, my work, my thoughts, my experiences. And no, if you're going to ask, I can't pick a moment, because every moment has been the moment. You know, and I'm not done yet. I'm you know, enjoying this new iteration of myself, where I can focus on trying to influence where our business is going and try to collaborate and interact with the best in the business and use my experience to help people be their best selves.
Yeah, and listen, I didn't mean it from that perspective. I'm excited to watch what's next for you, and I'm sure there's some big moments ahead, and hopefully in 5 years, 10 years time, we can sit down again. I think, Bill, I'd like to just thank you from the bottom of my heart for this. I think this will be a new series, and I don't mean this title because I'm jamming on it in my head as we speak, but it's kind of like the Hall of Fame series, and not because it's the Last Dance or anything, but just because I think you are at such an elite level that I'm excited for this new series that we'll bring out, because I know one of the purposes that I wanted from this podcast is to kind of scale mentorship, and also to show the breadth of opportunities that hospitality can give to the younger generation, because I think we're very bad at marketing how amazing our industry is to the younger generation. So it's probably, and I might get in trouble for saying this, my favorite episode so far. Sorry to all my other friends that I love dearly in the industry, but I'd just like to thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and keep doing what you do. I think, our industry is traditional in nature, and we need to be disrupted, and we need to improve. Technology is clearly at the heart of that opportunity. And what I would say to you, keep doing what you do. Congratulations on the success so far. There's a lot more to come. Don't be afraid to be disruptive and to encourage disruption from within the industry. But I'll leave you with this final kind of catchphrase. Disrupt to a purpose. Because disruption without purpose is interruption. And I think work with hotel colleagues through conversations like this, through what you do in the industry, to continue to focus on how do we activate our purpose, and then put everything in place leading to that. So stop, continue, start, and for you, just continue and have fun doing it.
I've learned a lot, so thank you.